All right. So there are many urgent questions in the field of multiple sclerosis that could benefit from great data and cutting-edge technologies. So today, obviously, we will deep dive into the topic of how great data and artificial intelligence can support us to reveal progression of people with MS faster and better. But there are many other questions that can be addressed using what we call so-called real-world data, which we define as any data that is gathered in the context of care or research so that it already exists and can then be reused for many different purposes. And although obviously there are many opportunities, it is extremely challenging to handle and analyze real-world data. And I'll share with you a timeline of a research project that was not MS-specific, but the timelines will relate to everybody who tried to do it themselves. So that specific research project wanted to bring together 20 data sources, approximately 20 variables per data source, to then do the research on that. And they spent approximately 2 years to find the data that they needed for their specific research question, then approximately 2 years to overcome all the ethics and legal challenges that arise with handling real-world data, and then another 18 months to harmonize the data and make it ready for analysis. So there was a little bit of overlap in between those timelines, but overall, they spent approximately 5 years to find, assess, and reuse the data. And that is specifically the timeline that frustrates me and that we try to handle in the MS Data Alliance. How can we speed that up? Because it can be done. We did it all together in the COVID-19 pandemic, where during the COVID-19 in MS Global Data Sharing Initiative, we have set up an initiative that aggregated data from more than 20 data sources across all continents, and we had the first patient upload 1 month after the global task force that said maybe we should do something. So in those 4 weeks, we managed to overcome all the ethics, the legal, as well as privacy challenges related to that. And only a few months later, we had the first data-driven insights that actually were used to support the update of the Global Advice for People with MS, which was then disseminated by the MS International Federation and translated into 18 different languages, and really reassured people with MS that, in principle, the effect was rather minor, specifically for the majority of people with MS. Obviously, we also managed to publish scientifically on that, but specifically the reassurance of this million number of people that we managed to reassure before the summer of 2020 is really what I consider the highlights of our activities. However, how do we now work on top of that? How can we move beyond the COVID-19 Global Data Sharing Initiative and start using these principles to overcome the sociological as well as technical challenges that are there when we want to handle real-world data? And with the MS Data Alliance, we have chosen to focus on 3 sociological challenges and 3 technical challenges to make our activities very scoped. So the more sociological challenge is that we have identified that not everybody is really fully aware of the value of real-world data, and limited awareness leads to the fact that they're less engaged to contribute to the data ecosystem, and therefore obviously do not invest so much time and resources to do that. Whereas we also identified that different stakeholders matter, and our stakeholders are clinicians, regulators, researchers, data custodians, people with MS, and they all look at data in a different way. They expect different things, they have different issues and concerns, and therefore collaborating at multi-stakeholder scale is non-trivial. And what we've also seen is that people don't really understand what I'm saying if you are a data engineer. There are a lot of data science concepts that are not so trivial to understand, and therefore obviously extremely complex to implement that in daily practice. And from the technical perspective, the data is not findable, the data is not accessible, the data is not interoperable, or the data is not reusable. So it is not sufficiently fair, which is an abbreviation of findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And we aim to overcome those challenges by a dual approach, where in our academy, we mainly focus on raising awareness, bringing people together, as well as educating them on trustworthy practices related to the use of real-world data, where the focus is mainly on people, and we really aim to educate and build that community moving forward. And then in the toolbox, we focus much more on can we develop software, services, processes, protocols to actually reduce the time that is needed to find, assess, and reuse the data. So because it might be a little bit vague, I give some examples of the toolbox. So first of all, we have our catalog, which is a web-based platform that allows you to interact in a user-friendly way. So obviously we will continuously improve that moving forward. The metadata on different real-world MS cohorts. And it's specifically to give you the opportunity to get strategic oversight. So there is already a lot going on in the field of MS, and to actually see, okay, who is collecting what? How can I contact them? How do they share them? So it's actually a digital questionnaire that allows you to assess the MS ecosystem. And currently we have more than 42 registries already there, and that number is continuously increasing. So it is free to access, so you can just go to the MSDA AMIF catalog, and then you can walk around in the catalog and assess our cohorts. And then to reduce the heterogeneity, we formulate global recommendations for data collection, which we have seen that is really a very powerful method to reduce the heterogeneity, both for prospective data collection, but also to support harmonization efforts when we're handling retrospective data. And we've specifically shown how important that is in the COVID-19 pandemic, where a global data task force agreed upon a core data set or a minimal data set within 48 hours. So again, that was mind-blowingly impressive of them, that they managed to assess in 2 days, okay, this is how we will collect it and this is what we will collect. And then we disseminated that across the globe, and people started using that minimal data set and adapting their data acquisition software systems according to these guidelines. And we did that for COVID, both for people with MS reporting the data as well as clinicians. And then also later, when the vaccines came to the market, we extended it with the COVID-19 vaccine formula. And we are extremely excited that in the next coming weeks, we will launch what we call our core data set, which is considered to be the data set or list of variables that serves as a recommendation for every single research question that is quite research question agnostic, and then the different research questions would be working on top of that. So stay tuned for the core data set. And then obviously we also have worked and built on an infrastructure that can facilitate and speed up large-scale collaborative effort. And that research infrastructure has been used in the context of the Global Data Sharing Initiative, where data has been shared in what we call 3 levels. So people could directly input data in the platform, but they could also share patient-level data with the central platform coming from registries that then implemented the core data set. And then half of the data came from what we called federated data sources, which means that the data itself never left the site, but we shared the analysis that were needed. They ran in the local, and then these results were aggregated in the central platform. This concept of federated will come back throughout the agenda. So if it's not clear now, hopefully it will become clearer later. So these tools will always be released in an open source environment, because that is also what we envision. That is the key asset of the MS Data Alliance, that these tools can be reused for everybody, by everybody, with or without our interference, but obviously can also be adapted to your needs. If you can just reach out to us, we can see how to facilitate your project. And then in the academy, again, we really focus on raising awareness and educating people. And we specifically are focusing on the following key aspects, which is very unique in the ecosystem. So it is about governance and use. So how do the different stakeholders collaborate? What is the consortium agreement? What are the consortium principles? How can we overcome privacy, ethics, legal barriers, and so on? How should you collect data? How should I handle it? How should I analyze it? So if you're looking for a data engineer or technologist that is willing to support your initiative, we can always support, as well as future readiness. So there are some what I call mega trends arising in the field, and some of them will be highlighted today because I really think that these things should be really, awareness should be increased, and we really aim to support the MS data ecosystem to handle the data in a way that it will serve not only for MS-specific research questions, but it will allow us to interact with other disease areas as well as become a leading disease area in the field of real-world data. So an example of our academy is our educational program, where we are touching upon the 5 top questions identified by our stakeholders. First of all, why should I set up a registry? Why should I care? What should I collect? How should I collect it? How can I ensure privacy and trust? And then what's next? What are these mega trends that are arising? And the educational program is modular, so it is a combination of resources that we can then do together with what we call a host entity, and we already managed to activate and engage with 2 that are launching the educational program in specific regions of the world. So we will collaborate with LACTRIMS to educate the Latin American region, so they take the lead in translating it, making sure that individuals come to the program, and then we come with material to do the education. And we hope that those resources can be reused moving forward, and then shortly after that, we will collaborate with the European MS platform to educate the Central Eastern Europe and Balkan region. And we actually managed to have different champions to touch upon these questions. How did they do it? And then how can we learn from these things in the other regions? So stay tuned, and then maybe you can already participate in one of the educational programs that are arising. And what we've also seen is that obviously you can educate them online or through webinars, but then they still need more hands-on personal advice. We've seen that in the COVID-19 Global Data Sharing Initiative. If they can interact with the engineers directly in a type of help desk service, and we can really hands-on help them with the questions that they have, education goes much faster. And that's why I'm specifically proud to launch what we call the fellowship program, which is every year we will elect or select one potential new champion in a region where we think that is of specific interest, so that that individual gets hands-on 1-year mentoring where we actually help them to set up a new initiative in their region, hopefully then advocating to their peers. And in that way, we really believe we can have this butterfly effect of new champions. And I'm inviting Jana to the stage to actually reflect on that fellowship program, because we will start this year in the Central Eastern Europe and Balkan region, and there is a short video explaining the fellowship program.